Hello, everyone. This is Jenny here. And ladies, we are here to tell you it is your time. It is time to be intentional with your choices. Don't waste even one more day hiding in your stories because you can reclaim your personal power. Ooh, we're going to come back to that word and be happy while doing it. And this podcast will show you how. Welcome to your next 50, everybody. I'm Jenny.
And I am Sylvia. Welcome. Yeah,
Got a,
Jenny.
got a doozy
Personal
today.
power. We do have a doozy. I've been using that word a lot, like, speaking my truth, sitting in my personal power. And then we had a great talk a while and we thought, well, I'll bring it to the podcast.
So we're calling this episode the new power paradigm, and it is your next 50 hypothesis that the world is going through a paradigm shift, and we'd like to have a conversation about it. And just to kick us off, we wanted to define what power is. So we looked it up. It says the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. So power is that
Mm.
thing that makes other things move. Um,
And I was thinking, let's take it back to the schoolyard, Jenny. Who's the powerful one on the baseball turf or the school grounds, right? It's the strong one. It's the ones who's pushing the others around. And I
well,
think power gets a bad rap over the years,
well,
and
I'm going
yeah.
to flip that because I'm going to say the most powerful girl in the play yard was the one that had the
Mm,
most secrets over everybody, who held that psychological power. So these are old stereotypes. These aren't
yeah.
necessarily the way the play yard is now. I certainly hope not. But that situates us in this conversation. And I want to bring in one more powerful woman. When I was a kid, my superhero was Wonder Woman. And she
Mm,
was one of the very first female powerhouses. You'll notice she looked like a Barbie, which always makes me laugh, but she had special powers. And when I was young, I thought Wonder Woman rocked. Like, if I could just have life like Wonder Woman, everything would be great. But we learn over time how we can exert our influence. Men learn how to do it one way, and women learn how to do it another way.
we're not going to go there this time, but I'm just getting all of these visuals about the mean girls, right? That psychology, and then the boys and movies like Grease, and West Side Story and all of these things. We're not going there though. But the word power is loaded. And as women, I think we don't necessarily resonate with that word. I was
Yeah.
thinking of my own trajectory and
Mhm.
going into business and even before working for others.
Yeah.
I love being in a position of being that go-to person, of being the one who makes the decision, making them how I want to make them, and then bringing them to my boss or whoever is in
Mhm.
charge. I've always gone and strive to get those positions, but
Yeah.
I've never said, that gives me power.
Right.
I've never, so that
Well,
doesn't resonate with me.
it's not called the Women of Power. It's called the Women of Influence
Oh, isn't it?
magazine,
Yes,
right?
it is too. And the
Yeah.
awards, like the women of influence,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So today we're dissecting that word power to
Yeah.
create perhaps, like we said, that new paradigm, that new definition of what that means for us personally.
Right. So a couple of, of course, we looked at Brene Brown's definition. She always does such a great job with these. And I think what we're describing here, the part that's making me cringe, is the power over, using
Mm,
power as a fear tactic versus power with or power to, where you're sharing the power. And she has this wonderful, I love the way she describes things that are hard to describe. She says, for power over, it's the idea that power is a finite thing that must be hoarded,
mm.
versus power with is it's actually infinite and expands among the people around you. I work a lot with folks that are in a number two position as a woman, and I think that that shift from number two to number one to being in charge is almost as much a psychological or a mindset shift, because as a number two, you're making somebody else look good, right? And so they hold the power. And as a number one, you are in charge. The buck stops with you, and getting comfortable with that seat and defining it for yourself. We hear about authentic leadership, but being clear about how you're going to use and wield that all important power becomes part of your signature style of leadership.
That's so good. Bringing it to I was looking at some of these awards. Forbes has the top 50, over 50, and
Money grab,
yeah.
marketing. Yes.
It's true. And they all, for me, revolve around money and politics.
And titles.
And
CEO,
titles. Yes,
right?
CEO and president, right? And who's got the most money and and but when we come down to it, is it that? Is it really that, Jenny? Like money equals power? I know when we have the purse strings,
Mm,
we make the decisions,
mhm.
so that gives us power.
Well, I'm going to say yes, and I'll tell you why. Because I have spent so much time on this podcast talking about money and money mindset, and I am wholeheartedly embracing that money is one of the tools that enables you to build power. And if you want to be an influencer, I think you got to have skin and money in the game. So yes, I do think money is a tool. Now, it can be a tool used for good just as much as a tool used for bad, but
Mm,
that commitment to make those changes really matters to me.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think there's the line there. There's the line between the two. And I think we've got our thumb on it right now,
Yeah.
is that women don't like to talk. I'm generalizing, but many women do not like to
Yeah.
talk about money, share things about money. They might not be as knowledgeable
Comfortable?
or comfortable talking about it. So if we're equating money with power, well, then no wonder we're not going after
Right.
the power, right?
Great
Isn't that
point.
like so clear,
That does like a boom, like an aha moment. The
right?
other story that comes up to mind for me is I took over as I'll just call it the leader for now. And I'm realizing to myself that was so much more comfortable being called the chair of the board rather than the president of the board. And
Hmm.
as I'm unpacking this, I'm like, my president word makes me think of the States where it's all about the president and the president has a veto, right? Versus a chair is I'm chairing the group, I'm chairing the
It's
meeting. It's
collaborative.
collaborative. Isn't that interesting that
Yeah.
that small shift in words feels completely different to me? And I didn't
Well, I
realize that
have
until
that
now.
visual right away, right? That
Yeah,
you say president of the board. I'm visioning
yeah,
an oval board,
yeah,
an actual table, excuse
yeah,
me, board of directors with the president, which is what we
yeah,
see on television all the time, right?
yeah,
And then as a chairman, however, it's true. It's
yeah.
softer.
Well, it's
Huh.
kind of you almost think of yourself as like a facilitator more. You're
Yes.
bringing out the best out of the people around the room. I mean,
Mm,
isn't that what we all want to do?
mm,
So yeah, it's funny. Another thing on another side, so titles do matter, right? One thing that I've been obsessing about is, the title on the board is, the president, vice president, the treasurer, and the secretary. And I just can't stand that word. And yet it's part of our speak on governance boards. But why can't that be the administrator, right? The administrator of the board. So these titles, and there was
yeah.
some research. That was a run-on sentence, but it's so good. I wanted to get right to it, Sylvia. I was recently at a conference and I heard a woman talk, and you're going to hear more about this from me because it was so fascinating. She did research for her PhD on women who are CEOs of over a $500 million business, and there were all sorts of really interesting trends about it. And one of them was that their new definition of power was completely different, and also they had gone through a heat moment, she called it. So, and all of these women had had some kind of a catalyst experience where there was some kind of crisis or some kind of an event that quickly honed their skills as a
Mm.
CEO and as a leader. And I found that was really interesting too. Often women are the second, that was my dog, second thought or the afterthought candidate. And so they also get put in positions that are really, really impossible. And then what they do with it in that heat situation is what really carves their leadership style. So, yeah, power is loaded.
Hmm. It really is. And I go back to the titles of these awards. So
You want to
power
go there? I don't want to talk about the awards. Go, Sylvia,
No,
go.
but the words that they're using for, they're
Mm,
not saying the most powerful women,
mm,
because I guess that doesn't resonate. They're saying the most impactful, the most
mm,
influence, but power equals influence. So it really means the same thing.
mm,
So we're just putting the pink colored glasses over it. But let's delve into, I mean, I want, as a
mm.
powerful woman, I do want to have more impact. I do
Hmm.
want to have more influence in my community.
Hmm. I think about power in that sense. It's so funny.
Hmm.
I think about being a leader. I think about being an example of others to others. I think about that my actions are the most important thing. What I say and what I do aligning is really important to me. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I believe money is one of those components, because I want to be able to put forward things that are important to
Mhm.
me.
Which comes back to having impact
Yeah.
around the table and
Yeah.
influence.
Yep.
Which
Yep.
all it we're going around in circles,
We are.
actually. We're going around in circles because it all comes down to power, and if it's
Yeah.
just the word we don't like because the
Yeah.
word itself is loaded, it goes back to those Mad Men days,
Mm,
when men were around the table and the women were the secretaries, right?
right.
And perhaps we're just negating that and
Well, we
we're
can't.
creating different structures. You were saying power is very, it's hierarchical. Let's look at I was like, let's look at the top 200 businesses.
Yeah.
They're probably structured very, with the president, the chairman, the president, the VPs, very structurally. These new companies,
Mm,
however,
mhm,
men and women,
mhm,
I would say with the millennials building all of these new IT and, the digital media companies, they are within, I believe they build cohorts, they build
mm,
collaborative teams
mhm,
that work together that don't even have offices, no corner offices. Everyone just works together and very different.
mm,
So the power is across. You can't see me on video here, but it's
mhm.
not a vertical line of
Right.
power based on fear, based on achievement, based on
Toe the
what you
line.
bring, right?
Toe the line.
It
You gotta
is
stay in the line.
across. It is as a team. That's how I'm seeing the
So
new companies.
so the paradigm, when personal power
Mm.
clashes with hierarchical power, and the fireworks start happening, right? Because we know the next generation is so much more aware of their personal power. They will let you know when they're unhappy. They will share with you how they feel about a situation or experience. And I'm going to go back to awards again, which is funny. I was sitting on a decision committee for Women of Influence Awards here in the Ottawa area. And it was really interesting to see how different age groups discussed
Yes.
things.
Mm.
So the older women in the group who came from a really, traditionally like accountant or lawyer backgrounds were incredibly firm and clear with their statements. Well, it's this, obviously, because of this, this, and this. And it was interesting to watch the younger people in the room go, "Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about that." Or, sort of engaging in a kind of a collaborative dialogue, open-minded. And it really, I mean, part of that is age. I'm not saying but they were all women around the table, but very different styles and very different approaches to decision making, actually. Because at the end of the day, we had to look at our scores and make a decision about who was going to be named X, Y, and Z, and why, and how we could all stand behind that decision. So, a great example of power. And also, on that note, I'm flipping it and saying, for the traditional white male who's been in power and led a certain way for so long, kudos to them for taking the moment to reinvent themselves, for taking the moment to seek feedback from the group, for taking a moment to find new ways to connect with those other generations, if they can.
Mm.
If they can.
We were talking before about one of the guests that we had,
Mm,
Valérie Pisano, who runs Mila, which is an
mhm.
artificial intelligence group here in Montreal,
Yep.
and how she, as a woman of influence, a woman in a powerful position, and what resonated with you a lot was, well, she can decide how she runs the show, right? And so being in
Wait,
that
hold on.
position,
What woman doesn't like to know how to run the show? Let's just call that what it is, right?
right, right.
So that oxymoron of being shy to come to power and yet having a great desire to shape the outcome. How many women do I work with and clients that have these wonderful, exciting, transformational ideas, but they can't implement them because they're sitting in a number two or a number three spot? So
And I work on the other
exciting.
side of the coin, Jenny,
Yep.
and we start our businesses then.
Yeah,
right?
that's
We
right.
don't want to be working. We realize I have a lot of colleagues who are coaches
Mhm.
who were in the corporate world and who were the lawyers and who are getting out now saying, I don't want that
Mm.
power paradigm. I don't want that paradigm. I want to
Mhm.
make my own rules. I want to run my business my own way.
Mhm.
And we see that in the rise of women in business, do we not?
Sure. Oh,
We
exciting.
totally see that. It's a very exciting. There are hundreds of thousands of businesses in North America just, popping up.
So, picking up on that, and the choices they make for their businesses align with their personal values, I would suggest way more. So, I started
Yeah.
my business because I wanted to be home with my kids and I wanted to work 2 days a week. And I couldn't believe somebody would pay me to sit quietly at my kitchen table, and I was working in fundraising grant writing, and it was the most luxurious 2 days of my life, I have to say, Sylvia, compared to having 2 toddlers kicking around under my feet. But, those are my choices. It wasn't my purpose at the time wasn't to make gobs of money. It was to have something that was mine.
Mhm. Well, and to do things your own way, right?
Yeah.
You wanted something different. You didn't wanna have to go to the office for 8
Yeah.
hours being told what to do.
Yeah.
Having done that and having been in very collaborative environments and having been in very hierarchical environments, for sure, most prefer the collaborative ones where you feel more important. You're not being told, you're not being spoken to like a
Mhm.
5-year-old. That's the
Well, you have to know
experiences that
that
I've had.
I'm a self-employed person. My mother ran a small business for 20 years. My dad was a sales rep who basically essentially ran his own portfolio. So, and my sister's a small business owner as
Yeah.
well. So, all of us, you could say, chose this path less trodden or whatever. If you're listening to this, one of my questions to you is, how do you define power? And
Mhm.
where do you want to have influence? That's another question for you today. How do you influence others around you? We always joke about the big stick versus the influence way, the influencing through words and whatnot. And what does the word power mean to you, our listeners?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if it is a word that you don't resonate with, well,
Mm,
choose another one. But it
mhm,
it does mean the same. I think we've you said so today. It means the same thing. How are we influencing? What's that impact that we want to have? I think many women have power in their households. They run
mm,
the house and then they go to a job where they don't necessarily run the show. And I'm thinking back on a lot of jobs I've had, and the complaints that people have are really never about the actual jobs.
mm,
They're about the structures and the
mhm.
people above them.
And the culture.
Always.
And the
The
culture.
culture, yes, the culture.
Yeah.
And that is all related, I believe, to power and who is
Mhm.
in power, isn't it?
Or how they
Uh,
wield the power they have.
yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
So, what a perfect segue because next week we're going to talk to Sherry Graydon, who has an organization called Informed Opinions. And one of
Oh.
her passions is helping women, how am I going to say this, speak about themselves, speak from a place of confidence and from a place of experience, which is slightly more nuanced than how a man does it. And she has some great techniques and tools. And I'm really looking forward to a conversation about how women can own the podium and speak from a place of confidence with power.
Mm. Who are the women that you look up to, Jenny, who you find powerful?
Christopher Freeland, easy.
Mm.
That woman, when she opens her mouth, she sounds eloquent, she's thoughtful, she's intelligent, she owns the space, she's not in a rush. Yeah, she's my gal. Could we get her on the
Lovely.
podcast?
Well, we do need our top 10 list of who we'd want
We
on
should.
our
Who's your
dream
list?
list of guests.
Who's on your list?
Well, right now, I mean, I have Michelle Obama in my mind. I don't know why, but I think we were always talking about Barack earlier. She's a very powerful woman, but again, the position she held, but also
Mhm,
because of how she wields the power,
mhm,
the words. Oprah
mhm.
Winfrey is another one. I mean, these are big, big names. Brene Brown, I find,
Well, no, if
very.
Oprah's people are listening, they are welcome to give us a ring. We'd love to have Oprah on the show.
Yeah, and that's a great exercise, right? Write down the women
Mm,
in your either in your communities or who you see. There's so many of them around. Like, who
mhm,
are they, and
yeah,
why are we intrigued? Like Jenny mentioned, the
yeah,
words that she, Christopher says, what comes out of her mouth, the way she
yeah,
presents herself.
yeah.
What is that? You're right, and I think often when we look at those power lists, the top, again, those lists, top
Mhm,
50 most powerful people on the world,
mhm.
it's their bank accounts, right? It's how much money they have. But maybe that's not the criteria. That's not my criteria. I'm not looking at because I don't
Well,
know, Julia Roberts makes $20 million a movie. She's a powerful person in Hollywood, but that's not why I would
uh-huh.
like her, right?
So I can't help but bring it back to tennis. You didn't think you were going to get away with an episode without tennis. You think of, well, Serena Williams for sure, how she wields her power and
Mm.
how she gets her message across. The woman is amazing. That almost feels like too small a word for her. But let's back it up again to Billie Jean King. I'm just finishing Billie Jean King's autobiography, and the
Mm.
how far ahead of her time this woman was, and getting the WTA, Women's Tennis Association, up off the ground and having equal purses for the men's and the women's events back in like 1973,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, yeah.
how much pushback they got. But tennis is one of the most equanimous, equal
Mhm.
sports of all. And you'll find that in the top 10 earners, sports wise, men and women, you will see the tennis players because they make good money. They make great money. I mean, it's a grueling thing to be a tennis player. The circuit is so long and there's very few breaks, but they're up there. And that's thanks to the work of some powerful women like Big Billie Jean King.
It is, and, like, we need those champions in other sports. I mean, my daughter's a soccer player, and, I mean, look, the women is there a women professional women's soccer player, a soccer team anywhere? Hello?
Yeah.
Anyway, no, they
Oh,
did well at the Olympics, but it's coming, but we need those
yeah,
voices, right?
yeah.
And yeah, what a great
Well,
conversation,
Well, maybe
Jenny.
we should get Christine Sinclair on the show. That would also be another great one.
Mm.
So if anybody's listening and have connections to these dream guests that we'd love to have, we'd love to hear from you. Always keen for your comments, for your thoughts, something that we prompted in your day, whether you're listening with your cup of coffee in the morning. Some of you tell me you listen as you're getting ready in the morning, which just makes me so happy, or on your commute. Do people commute anymore? I'm not sure. On your commute from A to B, send us a note, send us a DM on Instagram, send us an email, whatever way to get in touch to let us know what you'd like to hear more of from your next
And thank
gifted.
you for all of the lovely comments on and the 5-star reviews that you're all leaving. They are very appreciated because the more of those we get, the more higher up we are in the podcast playlists and whatnot. So thanks everybody. Thank you, Jenny.
Mhm.
Lovely to chat. And
I have to sign off with go be powerful, ladies.
yes, wonderful. We'll catch you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.